All right, Eric, we're trying something completely new here and actually going video. I was hoping you would have a bag over that head instead of the Mount Rushmore in the background. But just remember, I want to keep your hands visible at all times so we don't have any Jeffrey Tubin incidents here as we try video, which I'm only about 36% sure I'll be able to pull it off and get it edited and be video anyway.
Well, last night when we tried it out and I turned myself into a dog and did the Jeffrey Tubin, I mean, that was a little embarrassing. Try not to do that in front of Mike. I had to clean my house and I forgot he wasn't coming over. So I stopped. That's why I have to have the appropriate background for what's going on. And
That's a great background. I mean, see no evil, do no evil.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think as we talk, and of course that's in South Dakota, but, having you on here might like to get into, but I think it's an important conversation because this upcoming weekend, Montana Democrats have the convention, to change, well, hopefully change some rules and elect new leadership and take the leadership of the Montana Democratic Party back from Lou Jones, Kim Jong-Lu. So we got to put an actual Democrat in charge. So that's exciting.
No, it's going to be a consequential weekend.
Yeah. And we should probably introduce our guest here, Eric, Mike Jopek. Of course, is a friend of the show. He's what we like to say, a real Democrat, Montana Democrat that we can kind of get behind, a guy who's ready to take the what we see anyway. We're pretty much aligned on a lot of the issues, but we see kind of taking the Democratic Party back in the right direction. Where we no longer take victory laps for property taxes, and Mike kind of led the way and leading the opposition that maybe made the disastrous property tax bill a little less disastrous, if anyway, right, Mike?
Well, I think that was probably more Evan Barrett than myself. I mean, he was definitely out there with the spirit of 76, and that worked for a lot of real folks for sure.
Let's not, Evan's the pretty face in front of that, but you were the brains behind things. And so let me start out with a couple questions just so we can establish some foundation for people in Montana. You and Evan and I'll get into your experience in a sec, but you spent a lot of time requesting data from the Department of Revenue, testifying at interim committees, came up with the 0.76 multiplier that, thank you, Mike, because at least we get a sugar high for the first year before we totally get screwed permanently. So that is, as much as we can call it a victory, we made it a little less painful. So thank you for your work. But so in the 2 years prior to the session, when you're going up and testifying on, about fair taxation, who was paying you to do that?
Oh, well, I think my wife was mostly paying me. She's a little bit sore that I have to do this kind of stuff. But, one of the things that I found out is, I went back when I was in the legislature, I learned quite a few things, and Montana was good to me, and my local community has been good and kind to me. And so there is this effort to give back. And, there's no more important time than right now for folks to give back, to get active. I'm a farmer, and you guys know I grow a lot of garlic and I grow produce and all that kind of stuff. And I've done that for the last 30 years. And so I get to spend a lot of time outside. And for some boneheaded reason, I decided that what I was going to try to do is get on the governing board of the Montana Democratic Party as the next chairman and offer some change. I want a party that wins races. I remember back to the days when Evan was in Helena and Democrats were in control. That wasn't that long ago, and I think that we can win races. I'm a little bit tired of, Democrats working to elect moderate Republicans when they won't even support moderate Democrats, and so we got to get.
And I got to stop you there because this concept, this misnomer where they call them moderates because they vote on something one way or another. And Kim Jong-Un is a perfect example. I mean, we voted right on Medicaid. Okay. I mean, he's on the chair of his local board of his local hospital. Most of these guys have some sort of affiliation like that. The Kingsley's lobbyist in Helena controls the Montana Hospital Association. Actually, the two Kingsley's lobbyists, there are two. They control that. It was in the governor's budget. It was going to happen. We still kicked off 132,000 people off of Medicaid. Nobody seems to want to talk about them, those kids, because now they don't matter. I just don't see any of that. I mean, Lou Jones was, and drug Democrats along, voting against sportsman conservation. I mean, repealing numeric water quality standards that we need to live, declaring MEPA, Montana Environmental Policy Act, rendering it meaningless, and in the whereas is declaring climate change a myth. I mean, I don't think this idea, and Lou Jones himself brags, he's trying to defend himself that he votes with his far right 90% of the time. He was talking about how amazing the big beautiful bill that is killing Montanans, small businesses, hospitals, individuals, and he says he was working all along to address that and implement it. Well, that's not a moderate Republican. So there is no such thing. I mean, there are values-based, honest Republicans, and I like those people. I mean, I've worked with them for years. We could disagree on a few issues, but if you can identify values, and they're not just chameleons who are going to stab you in the back because somebody feeds them a thick steak and whiskey. That's different. That's not moderate. That's just corrupt politician. And I mean, people who take ARPA money and bid contracts that they vote on, or form LLCs with lobbyists to skim off the top of taxpayer dollars, that's not moderate anything. And I mean, defending people like Jason Ellsworth, who was using, slush fund money to attack the judiciary, and suddenly this group that calls themselves moderates or solutions and Senate Democrats are going to bat for criminal behavior. I mean, that's not moderate. That's crooked. I mean, we need to get back to the world where we call things what they are. We say what it is. We talk about what's on the average Montanan's mind, what they're talking about at the dinner table, what they're worried about, because we're not doing that anymore. And to lead into you, I mean, I came from organized labor. When I see, and Democrats like to say now, we used to actually support organized labor and, those values. Donald Trump gets rid of collective bargaining for 500,000 federal employees, thousands of them in Montana, the VA, EPA, AFGE, the union. And they're asking me, their old union colleagues, like, nobody's speaking up. Why? I'm reaching out to the Democrats saying, you have to speak up. This is wrong. You can't say you support labor and then ignore labor. And they'll say, but the teachers like us. Okay, but labor is a movement. We got to talk about labor. This is rights, basic civil rights and rights at work that are almost 100 years old now. You have to say something. Nothing. Then you got the Chamber of Commerce talking about how big business needs tax breaks, and Governor Giaforte talking about, the sales tax at the same time, and his favorite tax is the one that somebody else pays and he doesn't. They're pushing a sales tax. Democrats have traditionally won big opposing sales tax. I'm screaming. It's like, these two issues protect Montana families. We can't afford more bailouts and tax shifts to bail out these out-of-state corporations. Say something. Following week, the only message I saw on Facebook was, and not to denigrate the issue, but considering everything else that's going on, a real-time threat. The Democratic Party puts out a speech about LGBTQ. It's like, well, yeah, that's all everybody's civil rights and our being able to exist. That's important, but unions just got stripped of collective bargaining. That's people who serve our veterans and protect our environment and make laws better. Sales tax is going to hurt us all. Your silence is deafening, and that's what they came up with a response. And when you travel around, people who are traditional Democrats, they don't even want to say that they're Democrats out loud. They're embarrassed and ashamed. I'm a Democrat.
Montana Democrats need to become a party bigger than just two college towns. We have to be pretty honest about that. We only have 30 central committees across Montana. We need 56. We need more central committees on the native communities and that kind of stuff. There's all this blowback that's kind of happening about immigrants and that kind of stuff. I don't think workers that I know fear immigrants taking their jobs. What workers and trade folks care about is is that stuff is too expensive and nothing is affordable. It's those kitchen table issues. It's all those bills sitting on your kitchen table, the ever increasing health insurance, the ever increasing property taxes, the ever increasing crop insurance for farmers. That's causing a lot of distress. I don't think urban Democrats know how hard life is for rural Democrats right now. There's lots of farmers who are underwater. They're growing crops at less than they can get for them. It's a real problem. This is the second or the third year in a row there's going to be huge bankruptcies in rural America coming up. And, Democrats don't see some of that stuff because, look, the Montana Democratic staff is still in their pandemic work-related mentality. Everyone's still doing remote work. They're talking about selling the Helena office, for goodness sake. I mean, we know that coordinated campaign is a disaster. It needs help. We know that the consulting class, is kind of out there working different things right now, preserving their jobs and collecting money to keep their staff going and that kind of stuff to the tunes of millions of dollars. There is this consulting class table that's out there working in conjunction with the Democrats right now, and it's a problem. They're the ones that I'm actually mostly running against. My nice lady opponent from Missoula isn't who I'm running against suddenly. It's the consulting class folks that are making phone calls and they're saying, yeah, Jopek likes young people too much, or he's kind of pig-headed. And it's like, well, I have worked with young people my entire farming career. There's been 100 of them living on the farm. And yeah, I am hard-headed. I'm willful. I know where I want to go. I know how to raise money, and I'm not very emotional about it. I just want to get stuff done. But the job of the Democratic Party is to win races. That's the number one job of the Democratic Party. Win races, raise money, listen to the central committees. The job of the legislature is to govern. I want to get those guys so they can have 51 seats in the House. I want to make sure that Great Falls can elect Democrats and not moderate Republicans. I want the Democratic Party to go visit Hill County, to go to Miles City, and actually listen to the locals. We've gotten ourselves backwards right now. We think that the consulting class and all those elite Democrats, they're telling everybody what to do, how to think. That's totally backwards. We need to listen to the central committees and bubble this up from the bottom. It's the central committee guys that are doing all the work. All the consultants and the remote worker staffers, they're out there all collecting their pay job, and some of them are doing great work. But look, we got to get back. The Democratic Party has to reinvigorate. It has to reorganize. It needs new leadership. It needs discipline and structure. We need change.
I figure, we've been in crisis for a long time. And, when I outed exposed on social media, there was a dark money group, billionaires from out of state funding all these shitty, horrible ballot initiatives, like, let's have open primaries to elect Republicans. Okay, they can do that, but why are Democrats cheering that? Why are and they're having this meeting talking about dark money groups, and the interim executive director of the party and some of the party staff are at this meeting coordinated with dark money groups to recruit candidates for office who aren't Democrats and deciding who are going to be our candidates, what are going to be the ballot initiatives, and attacking anybody who's outside of that. And, that should not be the role of the party. The party is to win elections. And that means supporting people who are running, helping them be better candidates, not trying to, take the legs out from under them. And it deeply offends me. And of course, the dark money consultant class, they come at me because I was talking about it and I knew what happened in the meeting. They're trying to figure out where my sources are, which are multiple, because a lot of people in that meeting didn't like what was happening. Yeah. Everybody and their brother should have their hair on fire that the executive director of the party is in a meeting debating recruiting candidates to run against Democrats. That is not a party. That is a Missoula-based mafioso thing that is killing Democrats. And it's starting to look like they are intentionally trying to kill the party. And I'll tell you, I thought I might have been the only person that noticed this. Your opponent spoke at a picnic in Anaconda, and I really like her. I really like her for a statewide elected office someday. And I heard her stump speech, and she kept talking about, I'm going to work with the other side. What you have to do as a legislator and negotiate things, stuff like that. Party is, bare knuckles values conversations. There's no other side. You've got your values, and that's what you express. And I thought, okay, well, a few people there, after she said it, were saying that. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one who picked up on it. And then 2 nights ago at a Democratic event in Butte, talked to a friend who was is going to be a delegate to the convention, and said, Did you think that was really weird? More than weird. I think that that's going in admitting failure. And we don't have a Democratic Party. And what we've got now is the legislators are organizing for the party of the people. They're organizing to, on behalf of dark money groups, votes for the convention and petitions. Sometimes it's, well, we got to protect lobbyists on the executive board. We do. Everybody knows that there's a problem with dark money in politics and lobbyists. So the legislators are organizing what they have to have, basically trying to outvote central committees because legislators know best. This is the party of the people in theory. The fact that those conversations are even happening, where legislators are saying, we're going to take this over, they took it away from the people. I mean, that they can't read a national newspaper and say, okay, people like Chuck Schumer, well, whatever Chuck Schumer used to be, Hakeem Jeffries, completely safe districts. They don't have to campaign to win their seats. They're going to set values conversations and pretend to be in touch with the average American, just like legislators from Missoula, primarily, and Bozeman, a couple in Bozeman. We know what everybody needs. It's like, you showed up here well off and wealthy. You're not struggling with today's real challenges. And your big debates is what color you're going to paint the new parking kiosks in downtown.
Yeah, well, I mean, Missoula's seats are important. There's no doubt about it, but they're all safe districts. Single seat in Missoula is targeted as a safe district. And Democrats really haven't been winning races. I mean, we like to say that we picked up some legislative races, but that was because of redistricting. We knew that Dave Fern's race was a 53% Democratic Party quotient. We knew that Mark Thane's seat in Missoula was 53%. That's what the redistricting data said. Dave's redistricting data. He said, no, those are good Democratic seats. We didn't win those swing districts. There's a lot of swing districts in places like Great Falls. Great Falls is 40% to 50% districts. When I first ran, that was the district I ran in the Flathead. And we actually won that race. It took us 2 cycles to win that race. You look at like somebody in Havre, those are 41, 42% districts. It's like the Democratic Party has like forgotten about that. Those are the swing districts that Democrats can actually win. We can win more races in Havre and Great Falls and Miles City and that kind of stuff if we actually start talking about some rural issues and not just run a party just from the urban side on the leadership telling everybody what to think, how to do stuff. I mean, look, this is happening at the national level too. It wasn't too long ago when Bernie Sanders won the state of Montana and the super delegates gave the more delegates to Clinton. That wasn't that long ago. People remember that kind of stuff. Look at what's happening in New York right now with Mambani. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are pulling their hair out. They are freaking out that there's this young insurgency candidate coming up. Same thing in Maine with Planter running against Susan Collins, who's still very concerned about everything. Democrats don't know what to do with this young energy, and they're trying to protect their status quo. I get it. It's the same thing in Montana. They've been in charge of the party for years and years and years, lost everything in the state of Montana, but yet they still want to run the show. And, maybe they'll do a good job because they've started listening a little bit better about how people are talking about stuff and the things that matter. Again, that stuff sitting on your kitchen table that you can't afford to pay is a real issue. And I get that because I've worked with my hands for the last 30 years on the farm, growing garlic and doing that kind of stuff. And yeah, we as a party do need to unite. There's no doubt about that. And we will unite. This is the first contested chairmanship election for decades. I mean, yeah, there might have been some squabbles in the past, but it was between the status quo and the status quo. We're looking at changing stuff, and that's going to be upsetting to people, particularly the consultant class, those folks that are making the phone calls, starting the whisper campaign about right now, doing a bunch of political gaslighting, that I'm this divisive guy. Look, my career has been spent by chairing the local planning board, the local housing authority. I've chaired agricultural committees at the in Helena, and tax committees and that kind of stuff. I know how to chair stuff. I know how to bring people together. One of the best things that I've ever done in my life is we started this nonprofit in the Flathead called Whitefish Legacy Partners, and we've conserved tens of thousands of acres in the Flathead, provided recreational opportunities for hikers, bikers, equestrians, and letting people get out there and hunt, fish, and camp. Raised tens of millions of dollars locally doing it. We got us currently a staff of 6 or 7 people. I'm the immediate past chairman, did that for a decade of my life. I know how to bring people together. But yeah, I am hard-headed and I am not going down every emotional rabbit hole that everybody wants me to go down, because I think the things that workers are concerned about is that bloody everything is too expensive. That can of Folgers coffee that was at Costco for under $10 suddenly is over $17 for a can of Folgers. That's a 70% increase for people who don't like to do math. And that's just because of the tariff taxes that the Congress and the administration have put on. I mean, this kind of taxes is wiping out farmers in rural Montana left and right, where the price of parts is through the roof and health insurance is supposed to go up 70 cents. And everyone's like, well, yeah, I guess that's about as best we can do. But my God, we need some change and some leadership willing to fight. And yeah, I got some energy and I can get ratcheted up about this stuff. But, I also know how to bring people together on the same page. And I think that's what the party needs, is somebody hard-headed enough to take some shots and keep on moving.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I loved working with Whitefish Legacy Partners when I was a senator, and leveraging LWCF and conservation easements. And you guys did, and I worked really well. Didn't agree with a lot of things with some of the guys at Stoltz Lumber. But you guys building those relationships and greasing it out, that you're not just some crazy lunatic with purple hair, made my life a lot easier, because we weren't defined by Fox News or something like that. And you start getting to know Chuck Rhodey and things like that. And it's like, we're really not that different.
No. We need timber guys out there. My God, these are jobs. Democrats have lost track of the fact that the number one thing people care about is jobs and wages and getting ahead. We're like, we got to do this, we got to do this. And no, we got to protect the jobs too. And every one of those conservation, retirement, and development rights that we did had timber jobs in them, every single one of them, because we want to keep Stoltz going and we want to keep the other small timbers going, because we actually need to manage these forests.
Hey, Eric,
well, yeah, there's topics like that. I mean, you live it, you talk to the working class people. We need to be able to put food on the table and get that. And we can't all live in a trust fund world where money just falls off trees. Most of us don't have that. And, unfortunately, some of our people who rise to leadership in the party, the dark money class, here's a perfect example. You lived it and seeing where this happened. Most people don't need. I've got, sleazy lobbyist comes out with this, and he uses the excuse, housing, this bill in 2023, HB 819. He also creates a corporation so he and some of his, former legislator buddy can skim off the top, but that's it. I was raising hell about that. And I've made the consultant class. The vice chair of the Democratic Party, who says he wrote the bill and knows it inside and out, is really mad at me for calling this stuff out. But when you look at that bill and things are happening. So folks in Whitefish had a really great, you guys are building trails and access and all this sort of stuff. And suddenly, that one project, forget the name of the lake, the appraised value for an easement to build a trail all of a sudden is $28 million. It's insane. Well, where the hell did that come from? These idiot Democrats and dark money, Big Sky 55 dark money pay us, or backward Montana and have Montana, and these lobbyists that were working for the Chinese Communist Party to pollute the Kootenai River. And they're good people who sell themselves to do things like that don't exist. I mean, it's not good. They're for sale people. There's a big difference. But so they brag so much. They're still bragging this year. We've got the Democratic Party supporting this stuff, saying how great it is. Section 9 of that bill is the precursor. It comes from the American Legislative Exchange Council to use public lands as residential development. Now, they say affordable housing, but when you start appraising thing that's on a lake or on a river, it's no longer affordable. But what they screwed us, Democrats and Republicans, the Montana Uniparty, driven by these dark money consultants, now you can't build a trail for the public. Whitefish Legacy Partners can't do a shitting thing with it because now, because of this clown car of corruption, and the vice chair of the Montana Democratic Party, who also yelled at me for having an opinion on it because I have no right to an opinion, selling off my public lands and making it unaffordable so billionaires can develop is not a democratic value. Never has been, until the dark money consultants started taking all their money from billionaires. You've got Big Sky 55 Plus, Forward Montana, Have Montana, the list is on and on. Oh, well, where are you getting your money? Colorado billionaire. You know, it's attacking other people, real citizens. Jeff Mangan has a great bill or a great proposal to ban dark money in politics, corporate money, starting the rollback of Citizens United, which Democrats, Republicans, independents, people who don't vote know that there's too much dark money in politics, that we've also allowed foreign corporations to influence our politics. It's a national security issue. The only people who are disagreeing are these dark money consultants and dark money operatives who see we'll have to work for contracts and raise money from somebody who's not an out-of-state billionaire. They are mounting an opposition, and they're calling around desperately. We cannot have Mike Jopek in charge of the party. That should tell us all everything we need to know. When those are their values that they're saying, why they can't have Mike Jopek, because he's an honest, hardworking guy who speaks traditional working family values, we've got an enemy, and it is us.
I don't know. I'm a farmer, and I tend to use farmer language, and so I will say things like swampiness and melodrama. It seems to upset some.
God, Mike.
And it is true, and there are a lot of these, consultant folks out there, and look, some of them are doing a good job. There's no doubt about it. I got my favorites, but the thing that we've kind of allowed to do is we've allowed them to make the decisions, and the Democratic Party has kind of become silent, and now all the consultant class folks are kind of running the show. And I think that's part of the problem is we need to switch that up a little bit, because the Democratic Party is supposed to be about the people. We're supposed to be resonating the voices that we hear from the Butte and the Anaconda and the Great Falls areas, from the folks living back at home who are actually struggling, having a hard time paying the bills. All this nonsense that we're going to build this and we're going to build that isn't really panning out. And we see that in the Flathead because we're the build mentality. And our median listing price right now in the Flathead is $900,000. That's the median. I mean, come on, tell me a working guy can afford a $900,000 place and then pay high interest rates on it. I mean, that's just nutty. And so, part of the thing about housing is we need affordability attached to it. You have to remember it was the Republicans that dismantled the affordability programs that we had in the Flathead. They outlawed them. They did the same thing in the Gallatin. Said, no, you can't tell a developer that for every 20 houses they build, 2 of them have to be affordable to the working stiff, and it's like, come on, no, this is local stuff. And so, I think we desperately need more housing, no doubt about it. But how many more $1 million condos do you want to build for somebody moving here from Texas? Maybe 10, maybe 20, but not 10,000. Let's build some stuff that the working guys can afford too. And we need to empower the local communities again to be able to do this stuff. And
from the party value space, you got the right thing. And then when we implement it in policy, that's where the dark money consultants, I mean, there's a group that's based here in Butte called the National Affordable Housing Network. It's a partnership, bunch of different programs, Habitat for Humanity. I volunteered for them. I've helped them try to get
Great
funding.
program Habitat is, I'll tell you that, Ryan. Those guys do some fantastic work.
And I have friends that are in these homes that have affordable mortgages that they can. Bill and I have a friend, and they can afford it. I mean, on lower income people, disabled people, you can actually afford to do it. Well, Barbara Miller's her name. The woman's a saint, a tireless fighter for people, making sure we all have a fair shot. Trying to help her get into Bozeman, for instance, to build affordable housing. They won't talk to her. HRDC, they will not. They run her out of town. We do not want you here because they serve the developers. Right now, there's a ballot initiative for affordable housing and saving water in Bozeman. The dark money groups, Backward Montana and Big Sky 55 Dark Money, are opposing it because the developers won't make as much money. When we've got these groups that even the media will say, these left-leaning groups, they were once, now they're for sale to the highest bidder. But when those groups are the ones that are killing the chance at an American dream, and they are so deeply entrenched calling the shots in the Democratic Party, we got a crisis. Now I'll tell you, the former MDLCC director, I finally got to meet him, because I go off a little bit. I get a little salty. I want to wake things up, but Bill gets me wound up. He gets me going.
Such crazy influence on people.
He's a quiet influence. I mean, right now, you see his hands are down. If you looked at his hand when I'm talking, it's going like this. It's not me. So, so we, when we got all these the Machiavellian schemes going on to hurt people, and we got the legislators that are banding together because Republicans are the future of the Democratic Party. I'm still scratching my head on that because nobody's been able to explain it when I ask them. There's a lot of good legislators. I think we have a lack of party leadership and a long time lack of party leadership. Talking to them, they agree with my message. They're mad. Some of them are mad at me for using certain terms. I didn't use melodrama, so I wasn't as bad as you. I mean, I guess I should apologize for this. I digress. I did try to reach out throughout the
You
session.
said micro penis, though. I think that might have been a little worse for him.
Well, I don't know. I think Mike got yelled at directly. So the problem I have is throughout the session, I'm using numbers from people who know. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I don't know anything. I got a good memory. So I hear things. I have this huge network of people who know things. I got a good memory. I know people like Mike Jopek, Dan Bucks, Brian Schweitzer. When they're all saying the same thing and they can explain the numbers to me in a way a dumb butte guy like me can understand, okay, it's pretty clear. We did that during the session. We gave these guys opportunities every time. So when I hear, or on sportsmen's issues, I started getting attacked by lobbyists the day I joined Montana Sportsmen's Alliance, which kind of started me down. Lobbyists are pieces of shit. That was a guy named Ben Lamb. And as he got his other sleazy lobbyists to attack, they all work for Mark Taylor and raise a ton of money for Republicans. So I don't know why Democrats think that they're their buddies, but whatever. So, I got buddies that are Republicans too, just not that close. But they give them
the legislature, they're going to govern how they want to govern. I mean, that's their job, is to govern. The job of the party is to win races and get them more legislators, to actually help down ballot races, to actually help on some county races. My goodness, when is the last time Democrats helped up and down the ballot? We always do this targeted race stuff. And I get this battle-hardened mentality of the legislature, and that it's a hard gig. I was up there. I was in Montana's had 3 50-50 sessions. I was in 2 of them. And I was also in the 49 session in 2007 when Jimmy Keene probably started all this trouble with Missoula, because he voted with another lawmaker to elect Gary Matthews as the speaker over Dave Wanzenreed of Missoula. And that was a really tough time. That was on day 1. And I also remember when Mike Lang told Governor Schweitzer to shove it up his ass on live TV. I get that battle-hardened stuff, but that's not the job of the party. We're going to win races up and down the ballot, and we're not going to focus on the drama that's happening everywhere, because, again, it's about those kitchen table issues, about winning races, about making sure that we actually listen to what Great Falls is saying. And what I hear Great Falls saying over and over and over is no more moderate Republicans. Send us some Democrats. Help us find the Democratic candidates.
Well, yeah, that's what we need to do. And I have to apologize to you. And apparently, my point, I'm exposing these things. I'm having you on a podcast talking about the Spirit of 76, Brian Schweitzer, all that stuff. I am, so these guys like Jonathan Carlin would call around to people, not me directly, asking me to shut up. I'm making their life hard. I'm making it really hard, attacking lobbyists. Joe Cohenauer was calling around. And it's always like this network of people pick up the phone. At least you hurt their feelings by calling Missoula melodrama. Well, I'm a Butte guy. I mean, and maybe it's a little macho and all that and, toxic male stuff. But when you got a guy who shows up from New York and his credentials, he was an intern for Chuck Schumer, is saying, John Tester is irrelevant, his staff is irrelevant, Montanans are irrelevant, I know best. When he's telling everybody else about it rather than telling me why I'm wrong, because he's never been able to say this is wrong. I mean, Montanans, we can read our tax bills from 2021 before the legislature and the governor screwed us over with taxes. They threw us some crumbs back. They're trying to declare victory. I know that New York people think we're all dumb, and that's cool. I can read. And instead of calling me and telling me why I'm wrong, he's calling me names, calling around these people are. And I really got a little salty with him, and I called him a micropenis. And I upset people. What's her name? Lizzie Borden chasing me with an axe because I'm the worst person in the world, talking about Jonathan Carlin having a micropenis. And a representative in Butte is telling people right now, and they're using it against you because, and I apologize. And I also apologize because Lizzie Borden and the representative here know far more about Jonathan Carlin's penis than I do because I've never actually seen it. I was just kind of pushing back in the same manner. You don't want to, toxic masculinity. You don't want to be a man and call me? Okay, you got a micropenis. It was metaphorical. I should have said dickhead, chicken shit, coward, anything else.
Macro is the word. Macro.
So his penis is everywhere. He's got the actually, that might be it. Because all these rumors that spread and they call everybody, it is the macro penis. The Kim Jong-un macro penis. I'm on to something.
No, it's manly that way. I mean, look, all this kind of dramatic stuff is going to flare up. Again, the first contested chair election in decades. People are trying to protect the status quo. They're going to start the whisper campaign. They're going to gaslight everybody because they want to maintain control. When I was when I first started this thing, I was I think I was in the garlic field actually looking at the scapes on the garlic. It was that long ago, months ago. And I decided to call John Tester and I said, "Hey, John, I'm thinking about running for the chairmanship of the Montana Democratic Party." And, he's probably going to be mad at me that I say this, but he said, "Well, that's fucking crazy. I'd love you for it." And so, I do listen to people, all sorts of people. And, when I was talking to Brian Schweitzer and he's like, "Look, we need another farmer up there who can actually get some work done and can avoid some of this other nonsense going on." And so,
I think with John Tester, that's a great point because we have legislators that are bleeding over control in the party. We've got Missoula legislators saying, calling up MDLCC, you're not going to run anybody against Courtney Sprunger. You're not going to run anybody against Lou Jones. You're not going to do this. And they don't. And then at the same time, I look at, here's Courtney Sprunger campaigning against John Tester, Steve Bullock, Lou Jones, Lou Jones was campaigning, how horrible and socialism this Inflation Reduction Act is and the infrastructure bill and got to get rid of Tester for doing that. And now, all of a sudden, they blow that opportunity, but he's got to steal from you and me, the Montana taxpayer, to create his little slush fund, trust fund, when he already had it, but he hated John Tester for doing the same thing. So, but now we've got Democrats influencing the party. You can't say anything mean about Lou, Kim Jong-un. It's still true. I've heard for years. There's two types of people in Helena: those who work for Lou and those don't know they work for Lou. And now we have the Montana Democratic Party, not just legislators, that seem to be working for Lou because the party actually was sending out emails asking quietly to support Republican loose legislation that hurts working people. We are in a crisis with a uniparty in Montana.
Yeah, the uniparty is definitely a problem. I mean, look, there's only 60 Democratic legislators in Montana. There's 90 Republicans. I mean, we're not in charge. Pretending we're in charge is a mistake. You know, we need to fight some of this stuff because it actually matters to regular people back on the streets. The Republicans have figured out that, you know, Jones is the leader of the Nasty Nine. You know, the Freedom Caucus is putting out this information that he's getting a 13%, and you know, the party itself is in court trying to stop the Nasty Nine from getting to vote on Republican stuff. I mean, it's kind of wacky. And then you look at what the Republicans are happening at the PSC, you know, they're in court arguing about trying to throw out their current chairman because they don't like something that he said or how he voted, or maybe there's some big bills coming up in front of them that they think that he might be adverse to. You know, I don't know the full details, but I mean, there's a lot of chaos and drama in the Republican Party. And, you know, by comparison, Democrats are pretty stable. Yeah, we got some stuff that we're venting right now because we're heading into a convention, but that's what you're supposed to do. You know, the party has a decision to make on which way it wants to go. And people just give a damn about the Montana Democratic Party and how we're going to move forward. We are bloody tired of losing. You know, we've been losing and losing and losing, and we got to change it up because the focus should be on winning. Winning.
Thank you. Thank you. We should be winning. And sometimes you got to go down swinging. I mean, I look at these people that step up and run, you know, so early for Congress, and listen to their values. Like I grill these people, and I'm, you know, I don't endorse for a couple of reasons. One, because I use words like micro penis and it might come back to haunt them. But I don't want to haunt them. But I looked at objectively and I talked about their values. Russ Cleveland, why are you running? You know, he's talking about his kids, the Montana that he had to move away from, that he came back to because he loves the place. He can make it better. And somebody needs to fight against the stupidity that Ryan Zinke inflicts upon us. Ryan's a nice guy.
No, he's a great guy. I mean, and you're talking about Cleveland. I mean, my goodness, he's doing the work out there, and the Democratic Party should be providing him free access to data. The party should be actually supporting candidates statewide running, as opposed to the first thing saying, well, you got to pay this money so you can participate. I mean, I get it that there's a primary and there's Matt Raines from Sims coming into the race as well. And, you know, we have different things to say about all that stuff. But there are some legitimate statewide candidates that are starting to emerge. From the Electric City, you got Sam Lux, you know, he's kind of coming onto the scene now, young guy with a lot of passion. You know, from the Windy City, you got Riley Neal, lots of passion as well. And, you know, they're out there working hard, and the party needs to support this kind of effort. We have to get our mentality off that we're just going to lose. And we have to remember that we can win. We have won. When I was up there, the party controlled all state. 5 top elected officials were Democrats. The House was controlled by a Democrat. The Senate was controlled by a Democrat. You know, and we've kind of lost track that, oh my goodness, what winning tastes like. Winning tastes good. You can actually govern when you win. You can actually make some changes in people's lives when you win, you know. And if we can get more Democrats up and down the ballot, I don't care if they're in the county commissioner's race or if they're the sheriff's race or whatever. Those are Democrats running, and we got to support them. We got to become a party of 56 counties and get over this thing of being a county of just a handful of parties.
Well, you're right. And, you know, you mentioned Jimmy Keene. The thing with Jimmy Keene, even in the minority, what Jimmy Keene had, they respected, they half feared and respected Jimmy Keene because they never knew how bad Jimmy was going to make it hurt if they didn't kind of go along with them.
So I got across with Jimmy a couple times.
Absolutely. And you know what? Everybody who ran across with Jimmy somehow has some battle scars. And yep. Republicans knew that. Democrats knew that. Dave Wanzerveen sure as hell knew that. And the thing is, if you don't have respect of the people you're serving with because you'll always just roll over and give in, the things that happen is they'll make you all kinds of deals and then your deals all get vetoed and you actually got nothing. Kind of what happened this session, kind of because the party didn't have infrastructure and a machine to get behind those people, to give them spine and consequences. The party should have been out screaming about Greg Giaforte and Ryan Osmondson and Lou Jones betraying the deals. And what are they doing? They go on vacation and take these lavish trips with Abby Lee Cook. It's too soon, too soon. But the dark money groups, I mean, there's the thing. They post a picture on Facebook about being on vacation. It's like, you got to work. If you want to be part of this movement to make things better for Democrats, Republicans, Independent people of Montana, you have to work. Nobody gives a shit about your vacation. But when you're putting it in our faces instead of working and displaying values, you got to go.
Yeah. What I keep hearing when I talk to people all over the state, I don't care if they're young people or if they're old people, if they're working people or retirees, everyone wants to be heard. They want people to listen to them. They do not want you telling them what to think. People know they're getting hosed over and they're a little bit tired of it. And there is an uprising that's slowly happening with the Democratic Party. And again, we see it in New York, we see it in Maine, we see it in different places across the nation. It's here in Montana too. We got to make some changes. This is the course that we're going to set in Montana. We're either going to go down the same old road or we're going to make some changes. I tend to think we got to make changes. Coordinated is a disaster in my mind. I think we got to rework that system. There's no doubt about it. We got to start getting the central committees revitalized. We have to listen to people and what they're saying. It's not just, we can't just listen to one group of folks because the young people want to be heard too. They want a seat at the table. There's plenty of chairs. I don't know what the hell we're worried about. We got chairs up the Yahoo. We got chairs for everybody. Let's give people a voice. We're going to come up with a good battle plan and we're going to move forward. And that's how we're going to win. Look, everyone's worried about primaries and all this kind of stuff. We have to remember that the Democrats that come out of primaries are the Democrats that win. This coronation stuff never works for Democrats. You look at Montana's history, anytime we've coronated somebody, they've lost that race. The battle-hardened Democrats, and that's why I'm okay with the Raines versus Cleveland race. We can talk about different things. I want them to be battle-hardened. They need to be battle-hardened for what's coming in front of them. And they're going to figure out how to talk about that stuff and how to get people excited. It's part of the reason that some of the whisper campaign and the political gaslighting that the consulting class is spreading about me doesn't actually bother me that much because, maybe it's going to be effective and I'll go down in flames. And boy, I'm going to be smiling so hard then because my life is good on the farm. I'm actually making sacrifice to do this kind of work. And so
you are, and you're working your ass off. I mean, we asked you to come to Butte to speak during the legislature. You took a road trip, came down, had lunch with, I don't know, like 70 of us. Explained to us how property taxes and all these multipliers, all that sort of stuff worked in a really logical way. We appreciate
people want to make the stuff super complicated. I think that's the part. I get the legislative stuff. Everyone says it's complicated, but it can also be simple. And the message can also be simple because what folks really care about, again, is how much it cost. They don't care about what the formula was or what kind of paperwork. They want the cost reduced. It doesn't have to be on coffee. It can be on car parts. It could be on your taxes or on your health insurance. I mean, that stuff has got to come down in price.
It doesn't. When you look at the line that comes from some other people, I remember when you and Evan, before the session, were going and testifying and all this stuff, Greg Hertz was pissed at you guys and said, you're not smart enough to understand property taxes. It's very complex. Go away. Then, at the end of the session, Greg Hertz is saying, great, you took the simplest tax code in the country and made it overcomplicated. Now it's the worst. It's like, you lying then or you lying now? And now I find out that Hertz and Kristen Juris have been tinkering with the Department of Revenue on manipulating the administrative rules to make it even, well, either worse for you and me and good for, if you own grocery stores and stuff, it's probably good. Or if you're a big developer like the lieutenant governor is, it probably helps them. We get screwed behind the scenes.
The Republicans got a bad deal on reappraisal. I mean, that's what we're talking about, reappraisal. People's house values going up, and they're going to charge you more because the paper value of your house went up. Like you could sell your house and move somewhere else in Montana. It's like, come on, no one's moving.
Well, that's when their answer is, "Well, just move." Where the hell am I going to go? Where's my mom going to go?
And they gave you half your money back. For most Montanas, you got half your reappraised money back, and everyone's cheering because you got 50 cents on the dollar back. Well, I would have rather had the entire dollar back and don't even charge me any increase. But, it is what it is. But I think it goes back to this fact that stuff is too expensive. The legislature is going to govern how they want to govern. And they would govern better if there was more Democrats up there, because then they could taste how governing actually works.
That would be my answer if I were in the legislature and came out and said, "Look, we stopped a lot of bad stuff, made it a little better, a little less harmful. We need more of us here." That would be the answer, not taking victory laps over Greg Giaforte and the lobbyists' property tax shift to give corporate tax breaks. I mean, we need more people. Have that values conversation. It's a party of the people, not the corporation.
Yeah, I think Brian Schweitzer when he talked about it, what the Republicans were really trying to do was to get a sales tax in Montana. They want to keep the pain going on homeowners as long as they can so that we can actually enact the statewide sales tax, which is against the Democratic platform. And Democrats who are out there saying the sales tax might be a good idea should actually read their own platform, because it's pretty specific. It says no to sales tax in the Democratic platform.
I mean, when I hear Dave Fern talk about that stuff, I'm like, go to the other party. That's, when your platform, you ran as a Democrat, you were part of shaping this platform. I mean, you don't get to just change on us. And that would be one of those things where primaries are really important, and maybe he evolves through a primary and says, "Oh, yeah, I don't think this is in the best interest of the people." So some of the Democrats get really mad when people like me say primary the puppets. I want to make them better. And if they can't become better.
If anybody's got $15 and they want to get into a primary race against any Democrat or any Republican in Montana, God bless them for doing it. Because we need more people running for office. We need more people doing public service. I'm not going to agree with half of them clearly on stuff, but that's not my job as the chairman would be. I'm going to elect Democrats. That's what I want to do. And they can work out that legislative stuff or that local stuff when they actually win. Democrats always want like this 12-point bullet point solution for how I'm going to deal with this, how I'm going to deal with this, how am I going to deal with this. And I'm like, you're not dealing with any of that stuff because you're going to lose. You're too focused on policy. Let's win races.
Yeah, you say keep it simple, and that's something that Democrats have a hard time doing. I don't know if you've mentioned or if you listened to our Jerry Springer podcast a couple of weeks ago that we had. The word that came up was woke. And, for the last couple of years, I've been trying to say, people don't even know what woke is. Like it's not it's not a real thing to be scared of, but woke means whatever you want it to mean. And and I think we've seen that come out when Eric's fighting, trying to talk about real Democrats coming out and he's getting attacked. He shared a great story. I can't remember exactly what it was about, Eric, but it mentioned he got criticized because the author dead named legislative transgender legislature, which is a dickhead thing to do. But that's what they took out of it was just that one thing instead of the actual story of corruption in the Democratic side of the party. I believe is what it might have been about, Eric. But
Lizzie Borden came after me with her axe.
Yeah, but Democrats, ever since as far as I can remember, going back, Lee Atwater and George H.W. Bush, Peyton Dukakis as the card-carrying liberal, they're always really good at painting Democrats as socialist or woke or whatever. And that's the big thing that's hard to fight. Like I knew Trump was going to win when I saw the commercial. Says they care about they, them. Donald Trump cares about you, which is bullshit, but it was a great line for a political ad. And I knew that. And I said, oh, Kamala Harris does not have a chance to win that election. And that's what Democrats, while the Al Franken said the Democratic bumper stickers end with continued on next bumper sticker. We need to keep it simple and keep the message and talk about things people want to talk about. Otherwise, Democrats get defined by how Republicans and how Sean Hannity wants to define them.
Yeah.
You
I
get
got
sucked
farmer
into
vernacular in my system, and I get in trouble for saying simple stuff like swamp and melodrama, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I watched the latest episode of South Park the other day when they're talking about Wok is dead. They got the city Wok guy out there talking about Wok is dead and how tariffs are hurting his business. And it's like, oh my God, that stuff is
Brilliant.
not only funny, it's right on point, and it's driving a message that people actually understand.
I mean, I was talking to a lady I met in Missoula at a football game last week, and we're sitting there talking about all these things. And I'm not all that filtered, but it's sort of thing. If we talk about, in Missoula, she explained, you can't say it's like, no, I don't really think men belong in women's sports. It's not really happening though, but no. And she was a collegiate basketball player, and we're talking, and of course, I have to joke say, well, I'd wear a wig to go play against you, probably to try to, spend some time with you. But, that's different. That's what the Republicans mock. But she said, we can't talk about these things out loud. We can't, even laugh at ourselves and evolve. I want to evolve. I want to be a better person. I don't want to hurt these people. And, the trans people that I know, they want to be left alone. They want to exist. And I absolutely want them to be left alone and exist. I don't want to cast them in a spotlight because some Democrat somewhere is trying to use them as a platform and putting them all at risk. It's like, why do we do this? Why does the lady from Billings, Carrie Seekins Crow, she's obsessed with trans people? I mean, why don't we just stand up and say, leave them alone? It's you will go all kinds of places. I mean, you're so worried about this. Most serial killers are heterosexual white males with tremendous charisma. Shouldn't you be more worried about them than you are about the trans person minding their own business, just trying to pee?
The culture war is exhausting. I find it exhausting.
Oh,
You know,
terribly.
and we're winning the culture war, we're losing the culture war, but it's been going on for so long, and some people really like it. I want to focus on affordability, housing, freedom. It's kind of like the three things that I think people actually care about. Nobody wants us to tell us what to do. We just want to be able to afford our rent. And look, I'm going to buy some coffee that I can actually afford. And I need some parts for my tractor. And that stuff is bloody expensive suddenly. And we kind of get sidetracked with this stuff. I don't know. Nobody I talk to wants, male cheerleaders in NFL, as far as I can tell. They're really worked up about that suddenly.
It's
And,
crazy. Yeah.
I don't know. It's the culture war stuff.
It's crazy that we get so distracted from those issues. The legislature spent so much time fighting back and forth over these issues while Montanans are hurting. Trans people need housing, healthcare, a good paying job, and all that stuff. Can we not focus on policies that move us all forward instead of attacking people or getting into these trenches over culture stuff? That leave them alone, and quit screwing me over in the process? Can we just maybe move things forward and have meaningful conversation?
Yeah, no, I think having understanding and compassion is how we're going to get through this thing. And, it's again, we're in this fight for the soul of the Democratic Party, and some people will take insult to some of the stuff that I might say or you might say. But look, I think everyone's in this for the same reason, for the best interest of Montana, because Montana has been so damn good to all of us that we have an obligation to give back. And, we got to listen to young people just as well as old people. We got to listen to working people. We got to listen to retirees. That's our base. Those are our people. And that's how we move forward. We got to do it from the bottom up. We cannot dictate the terms of the conversation because it's going to backfire. Chuck Schumer is seeing that in New York. He's seeing that in Maine. He's pulling his hair out because he can't figure out what's going on. And what's going on is that people want change and they're willing to say they want change, which is the democratic process. And that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, vote. And well, I appreciate that your recognition of it. You spreading the message because I had a couple different people talk to me. They're just talking about that kind of convention and stuff. And they're both women, and they're talking to me and says, you like this Mike Jopek? I said, I like him a lot. I like Shannon a lot too. I mean, I
Oh
just
yeah,
think,
nice
for
lady.
this,
No doubt about it. Nice
and
lady.
absolutely, I would like her to be a candidate for statewide office, which chair of the board of the Montana Democratic Party is not exactly a uniting position to run for office in the future. Dennis McDonald can tell us all about that. So I mean, it's not a personal thing. It's also like the dark money groups, their preference and this bullying and stuff that I'm just going to resist because I don't like it. But they said, well, like we need another old white guy. And I'm going in my back of my head, because I'm usually pretty outspoken, but I'm still processing this, like, I'm an old white guy, right? And when we look at the current leadership of the party is not an old white guy in the state of Montana. If we're going to stereotype instead of finding the best person, the best values and all that sort of stuff, and do the whole, we have to categorize and pigeonhole people, it seems like there's just an inherent desire to always be in the minority and portray ourselves as victims, which, right now, I'm a Democrat. I don't have a lot in common with the Montana Democratic Party. I would love to see that change. People say, we'd like you to be part of starting a third party. The candidates that are out going to central committees have central committee members saying we need a third party. And I say, no, we need to return the Democratic Party back to where its roots of talking about kitchen table issues, and hopefully pushing the Republican Party back to the same some level instead of talking about bathrooms. Maybe we can actually move forward as a country and not let billionaires do social experiments with dark money groups and consultants. Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be sweet. And maybe I am an old guy. I tend to look younger. I look as young as Bill, I think, when I look at the screen here.
Yeah, well, next to Eric, we both look really, really young.
It could be. And when I first ran for office, I was one of the 40 under 40 from the Flathead. I was a younger guy back then. And I remember when I was working with Brian Schweitzer, David Sirota was sitting at the desk next to me. I was doing the governor's data, and David Sirota, who was Bernie Sanders' speechwriter, was doing stuff for Brian Schweitzer when Brian was taking people on bus rides to Canada to go get medicine and, doing this kind of theatrical stuff that brought attention to issues. And yeah, I'm clearly older than the 100 young people that have lived on the farm over the 30 years now, but I was young when I first started. But one of the things that I do really appreciate about younger voters is, look, they want to be heard just like everybody else. And there's no doubt about it. They need a seat at the table. But younger voters have a lot of passion, a lot of energy, but they also can use a little bit of discipline and structure. And I think that's what the Democratic Party needs, is it needs new leadership, it needs discipline, and it needs structure, and it needs everybody to get on the same page with that passion. We can't be running around 100 different directions. We just got to focus and start winning, raising money. That's what the party's supposed to be doing. We're still burning through all that money left over from the last cycle. And it's one of the things I do worry about a little bit is, like, is the party actually going to have any money going into next year? Or is it going to be all this consultant class money out there doing stuff? We got to get a grip
right
on
now. It is former Democrats with these big sugar daddies, Colorado and all that stuff, that used to be Democrats. Hell, some of these people used to work for John Tester, who say out loud, John Tester's irrelevant. I'm like, I don't know about you. I took a pay cut when I went to work for John Tester. I believed in the man. I was proud of the work we did in the value system. I definitely, and a lot of people liked them, and a lot of people have buyer's remorse over the election. I think saying something like that is both tone deaf and says a lot about their character. You don't get rich in Senate staff jobs, those who work for them, or Senate campaign jobs. That they're out there saying things like that just shows that they have compromised values. And when you've got these big dark money groups having their secret meetings, and there were legislators involved, well, at least one that was named. But
John Tester, hardest working senator in American history. I don't know a single damn other congressperson who would come home every weekend to run their farm. That guy is a workhorse.
And after being a staffer, trying to keep up with him for like the first day and a half as we came back before he went to the farm, I was exhausted. And to think about that guy putting in those long days and long miles. And then he's going back and welding some broken part on his tractor, or, him and Charlotte doing things on the farm. I mean, that dude, the work ethic and the values, which is what I appreciate about these early candidates who are going everywhere, meeting with people, having values conversation. That's what reminded me of. That's what the traditional Democrat was, talking to people that they may not agree with, knocking on the door of somebody doesn't necessarily like you, and convincing them that there's ways to work together and move forward. And we just don't have that when we have the party, people in the party writing letters to the editor saying people just want bipartisanship. I've knocked tens of thousands of doors, tens of thousands of phone calls. Not once have I ever heard somebody say, I just want bipartisanship no matter what you do. They always have some issue, real or imagined, that's on their mind. And not once have I ever heard that. But when you're talking about people in Missoula or Bozeman who don't have to go knock on doors, that's why they think that. You got to get out there in the real world.
You got to get out there in the real world, and you got to wake up early. I remember the days when Brian Schweitzer would call me up at 5 o'clock every morning to talk about something going on. And, that guy could get some work done. He's another farmer that can get some work done. And, I find my politics somewhere between John Tester and Brian Schweitzer. I don't know where it is in that spectrum, but maybe it's just that farm ethic, and you just kind of grow up working hard, and, you got to get up and you got to do the best that you possibly can. And some years the crop goes to shit, but you're always got next year. And so, we're in this cycle with Democrats right now where stuff's not working so good. And this might take 2 years, it might take 3 years, but we're going to have to start digging out, because nobody wants to be the permanent minority. And that's exactly where we're heading unless we start smartening up a little bit.
And I think you're in a great position. You're good at talking about it when it's populism. Brian Schweitzer still to this day calls, he reads all the time. You talk to him. He calls around people in little towns in Montana and stuff like that. Hey, what's on your mind and stuff? He's not in politics. Nancy will kill him if she finds out he's doing it. He does that. John Tester would do that. He was approachable at the airport. This is what people think. And as a staffer, when you're getting a call and saying, here's a number, you need to call this lady back, she's having a hard time with Social Security, okay, they're talking to people. They're doing the real work. Meanwhile, here we are with this clown car of people in office. DEQ fails and lets Butte's water get polluted because it's not doing its job. There was a release without a discharge permit into a creek. They're not doing anything. You bring it to legislators on both sides. You're supposed to be the oversight. Yeah, we don't want to talk about that right now.
Yeah, I was talking to a Central Committee person the other day, and I won't say who it is because I'd get them in trouble. But I was like, what do you think the Democratic staff is doing in Helena? And they're like, I have no idea, and they're so out of touch with what's happening because nobody's talking to anybody.
They have no clue. I mean, Steve Held, we had him on the podcast. He wanted to start a Central Committee in Ekalaka because he's found that there's quite a few people who think like him. Kept calling the party. And after a couple of weeks, he's calling me. He said, do you have ideas how I can actually get a call back on how I start to reinvigorate a Central Committee? No. So we'll start calling board members and saying they're not doing their jobs. I think he finally got a call back, but I'm not sure. He was pretty pissed off and dejected that he can't even get a call back from people who are paid to do that.
No, we should have a dedicated staff person who's helping locals do this kind of stuff. We got to get away from this targeted concept and actually help Democrats up and down the ballots. 56 county approach. There's good stuff happening in our college towns for sure, but that's not 100% representative of Montana. And, if we want to be the party of Montana, we're going to need to acknowledge that we need to be bigger than just 2 counties.
And even some of the people in those counties, I mean, when you look at, Gallatin County, when you got the people who have the competitive districts that have to knock on doors, they're already, like Josh Seckinger and Scott Rosenweg. They're out knocking on doors already. They're talking to people. They're having to raise money because they have competitive seats. They're out reaching out to people. They're an anomaly in their county because they have to do that. People don't have to mark competitive races. They're anointed into their positions, That's the places we can even throw Butte into that. It's the representative from Montana Power, because that's how it plays out, or Northwestern Energy now. Goldman Sachs. So we need somebody who's outside having real conversations with real people to see what people want. out of representation, but we all have concerns about, well, shouldn't say we all. Those of us who aren't trust fund kids or born on third base, we have real concerns. Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and we need help. So a guy like you talking those values, maybe inspiring good candidates and inspiring, not that they're not good candidates, you're not a bad person because you're in Missoula. They vote the right way on most things. It's just like the agenda and stuff like that. You got to, maybe it inspires them to get outside of the bubble a little bit and say, what's the real world like?
Yeah, no. We just need mostly to give a damn.
Give a damn.
We got to give a damn. I mean, we're going to have to fight our way out of this nonsense. And look, the Democrats don't like it that they're, maybe I upset the apple cart a little bit because I got in the way of the coronation and that kind of stuff. And, I'm still the outsider, the underdog. The chances of the nice lady from Missoula winning are much higher than my chances of winning. And I'm okay with that because I am running the underdog campaign. And, I know people are listening. They might not like what they're hearing at the status quo people, but I know they're listening and they got to change. The party has to change and acknowledge that people are having a hard time. They're not getting listened to, and stuff is too bloody expensive.
Well, I do hope no matter how it comes out, she's a nice lady. She's smart. I hope that she listens too. And even no matter how it comes out, if it's her, or if somebody else gets nominated, I hope that person is listening and taking notes and saying, okay, there's more out there than just Missoula and Bozeman and corporate whims in Butte and Goldman Sachs flying local or elected officials around on a private jet. I think we heard this story before. Goldman Sachs, lobbyists, monopoly utility, and elected officials from Butte get on a private plane and come back and say how awesome this is going to be. We already know how that plays out. So we need the spine and the rest of the world to point that out. Say, Butte, you're in a bubble. Just like Bozeman and Missoula need to hear it. Rolling back MIPA, letting polluters destroy our water. Bad. It's bad for agriculture. Bad for humans. It's bad for fish. Stop it.
We forget our history. I mean, we were kind of in this social media age and we like our 30-second clips and everyone can get worked up about the latest 30-second clip, but we tend to forget our history. When I was born, Jim Crow laws were still in effect. I know I sound old, but that's not that long ago. When my mom was born, it was the military who were beating the snot out of workers in Colorado and New York and Louisiana. That's when my mom was born. I mean, we've had to fight and scrap for everything that the working guy has ever gotten in their entire life. And it's going to be that way moving forward, too. We're going to do it nicely. We're going to be sweet about it. But the fighting thing, we got to fight for the values that we believe in. And the uniparty, the get along status quo, it's not really working that well as far as I can tell for regular rural Montanans. And, we're going to have to unite both rural and urban in Montana because there's a lot of Democrats in rural Montana at the coffee shops and a lot of moderates who are going, well, yeah, there's trouble, but everybody's silent and all I keep hearing this nonsense. So I guess that's what's going on. And Democrats need to be a little bit louder about stuff that actually matters to working people and retirees.
Well, and when you strike a nerve and you disagree with them or you say something and they call around talking to everybody about their feelings and we get back to populism, I find, and they'll say, well, if I say this, they'll say, well, you sound like a Republican. But Republicans started taking populism away from Democrats quite some time ago. But the real feelings when Lizzie Borden wants to call everybody and talk about, I mentioned her and called her Lizzie Borden and talked about her acts again today. I didn't talk about her taking naps in intersections, so I was being pretty polite. But, when she says I hurt her feelings, my answer is, fuck your feelings. Really, people are hurting. I don't care if your feelings are hurt. Don't drink and drive. And I won't talk about it. Don't attack people for I had to Google what dead naming was, and I didn't even notice that in the article. That's not, the trans people I know have never told me that that's dead naming or that that's a thing or anything like that. And those that I knew before their transition and I screw up and I call them by that name, they don't slap me down, because they know I mean no harm. I'm an ally, So, but when I've got the elitists who want to do that, and it's, well, shit, Lizzie Borden tried to make the school shooting in Minneapolis about her. It's like, no, fuck your feelings. Kids died, not you. So we need to get back to those values conversations instead of policing everybody with stupid statements that pisses everybody off.
No,
Mike, you're a lot more woke than I am. So when somebody tells me their pronoun is XI, how do I pronounce that?
Walk is dead is what I.
Walk is dead.
Walk is dead. Walk is exhausting.
Yeah.
I try to be walk.
Well, you do a good
but I'd
job.
rather run.
I don't know. You do a good job. And look, I'm a farmer. I got farmer vernacular. I'll step into it left and right all the time. And I know that some of the college educated folks take it a little bit harder, but I can talk about Dodge Dart Slant 6 225s and what a great engine that is, for those cars. I can talk about what the 1600cc VW engines are all about, or how the Ford F50 in the early 90s was much better than the Ford F50 that they're creating today. And so, I can talk farmer talk and, I can also talk urban talk. I can tell you about solar panels and how much generation my solar panels on the farm are generating, or why I like the particular inverter that I got, or how much the batteries are actually keeping charge. And, yeah, I'm seeing the climate change stuff that's happening on the farm and, the chaotic weather. And I get all that stuff. But, again, I got to talk to regular people. And when I talk to regular people all over the place, they tell me that they can't make it work at their current job right now, and they got to get 2 jobs. That's what they're telling me. They're not telling me about all this kind of culture war stuff anymore. The only folks who are fighting the culture war seem to be a handful of Democrats and about 900 billion Republicans. No, I mean, just give that a rest for a little bit, and I think we'll get ahead. And then once we can win more races, then you can govern. And you can govern how you want to govern. You can actually cut taxes for people, make sure that we got places to hunt, fish, and, camp and that kind of stuff. Make sure that healthcare costs are reduced and power rates are reduced. We need Democrats talking about that stuff. The silence is awful. When I talk to my Central Committee folks, they're like, well, no Democrats saying anything about anything. They're just telling me how great everything is. And nobody thinks anything's very great right now.
We want to be nice. Nice becomes a replacement for competent. And, you're so refreshingly honest and just plain speaking that resonate with everybody. I mean, I try to be authentic and stuff. I mean, Father Mike, I've got to confess, I did natural resources policy for John Tester. I lived in Missoula for 12 years before this. Maybe I got a little on me. Could be the water. I had a big dead elk on my wall and all that stuff. And I'm feeling a little guilty about this. Never lied. Never told anybody I shot the elk or where I shot the elk. Or I would say, well, where'd that elk come from? And I'd tell them where it came from. A buddy of mine shot it and never went for his house. The honest to God's truth, Mike, is, and I believe in hunting in the North American model of wildlife and very passionate about it, but I've got to come clean. The only elk I've ever killed was in a Prius, and that's no shit. So you've inspired me to come clean on my dirty secret.
That's a pretty good, actually, acknowledgement. I mean, I've killed plenty of chickens in my life because I'm an old poultry farmer, and let me turn that beeper off. And we used to raise chickens and eggs and all that kind of stuff, and so I know about slaughtering animals. But I don't know, the elk on the Prius. That's pretty good.
So
I think the Prius is more of the confession there than the elk.
Nobody else gets this because they're not familiar with poultry vernacular. And I'm kind of a nerd and weird, and I don't sleep a lot. There was years ago, there was a lady who wanted to keep she had a comfort animal that she said was a chicken. I mean, I tried to help her, seeing if we could get the Department of Justice say, yes, this is a emotional support animal or anything, and they don't qualify. And the Butte guy who was stuck enforcing it, he's just doing his job. And I walked up to him one day and he's kind of like, get away from me with this stuff. And I just said to him, I said, come on, Ed, please, I just want you to hold my cock and pull it for a minute.
There we go. Yeah.
And
but I remember
so people outside of the chicken world will have to Google that to see what it means, and it's not filthy.
Well, let me give you a couple of chicken sayings you can say. You can say scarce as a hen's tooth because chicken don't have teeth. And here's some other things that you probably don't know about chickens. Whatever color the chicken's ears are is what color eggs it lays. And
I didn't even know they had ears.
Oh yeah, they got.
I guess they would have to.
Ears. Some of them got, green ones. Some of them got brown ones. And some of them are white. And I learned about all this chicken stuff because my neighbor Gladys, bless her heart, she used to have chickens way back in the day, and she was from that generation that when your baby chick had trouble, you would actually bring that baby chick in the house and you put in the oven, and you put the oven on really low so you can save that chicken's life, because that's how valuable these livestock were to that generation of folks. They grew up without power. My neighbor grew up without power. And you ask, people about rural electrification, they think it's this thing that happened 300 years ago. It happened one lifetime ago. She didn't have a car. Her husband used to haul ice from the lake for refrigeration. That was their jobs, and that lumbersmithing and lumberjacking, life was harder. We've kind of grown up and life is really easy and that kind of stuff, but it's not that way in a lot of parts of Montana still. It might be good in the $1 million condos and that kind of stuff, but rural Montana's got a different lifestyle, and we need to make sure we listen to that.
And now you mentioned, well, that's handy life skills to know, is because the bipartisan group of sleazy lobbyists and those consolidations and data centers, and when we got Democrats bringing in the big Republican donors in the data center world and driving up our prices, and now they're attacking Brad Molnar for asking questions about it. Pretty sure that I'm not going to be able, and the mayor of Butte getting on the private jet and cutting the deals, pretty sure that I'm not going to have power here pretty soon. I won't be able to afford it if I have it, so I know what to do when I have to raise my own chickens, which are illegal in Butte right now somehow. So we got to change that too.
Chicken in every pot, that's what we need.
Is it true that chickens don't have a separate butthole and vagina?
Chickens have one vent, and that's where the urine comes out of, that's where the poo comes out of, and that's where the egg comes out of.
No? Wow.
Yep.
Mike Jopek has all the answers to everything, and I think we just proved that.
Some of them that we don't even want to know.
I'm officially endorsing Mike Jopek for the chair of the executive board of the Montana Democrat Party.
Well, and that's this
anybody
weekend.
Who knows that?
That's this weekend. That's happening in Livingston and the Windy City. I got to shell out. Don't tell my wife now because she's already mad at me for spending too much money, but I got to shell out $500 to go do this thing. And I don't know what Democrats are thinking, having the cheapest convention motels that they're booked out is like $400. It's like, Democrats, stop. Who are you catering to here? And so
right.
It is this weekend. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The rules convention is on Saturday. The officers election is on Sunday in the Windy City, right there by the railroad district. And then after that, the party's going to unite somehow. And there's going to be criticism moving forward, no matter what. But look, this is democracy, and we're criticizing with words. And that's what we want people to do. We want to have a vigorous debate. We want to move stuff forward. We don't want to be in the streets fighting. That's stupid. We debate with words, and sometimes they're critical. Sometimes they say good jobs. But look, this is America, and we're supposed to do it this way.
Yeah. Spread the macro penis everywhere and do it the right way and involve everybody. I like it.
All right. Well, good luck, Mike. Hopefully things go your way, and that $500 is well spent. And thanks for fighting the good fight to hopefully someday we can see what it's like in Montana to see someone with a D next to their name actually win an election.
No. Well, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I know you guys get some flack, and I get some flack too, but look, you guys are tough. You're from Butte. I'm tough because I'm a farmer, and we're just going to do what we do, and I think that it's a good thing.